Good morning. My name is Harry Fisher. I'm the chair of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I want to apologize for the late start to the meeting, but I'll call the meeting to order at 9:20 a.m. Would everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First on the agenda is the assessor's report, but I do not see our assessor.
Yes, the assessor is, sorry about that. The assessor is unfortunately not here today due to a family emergency. So she asked that I just present the assessor's report. And again, you all have received a copy in the package. And again, let me just go through. The tax bills have been sent out. Senior and just, I think, just draw attention to the senior and disabled property tax relief. Right now, the total for 2023 tax credits will be $833,732.51. The applications were sent out to all property owners that had filed previously, and there were a total of 436 qualified applications, which is down from 2022 of 463 and down from 2021 for 481. The reval, there were two bids from J.F. Ryan Associates and Municipal Valuation Services. A final determination will be forthcoming, and the 2025 revaluation is expected to begin January 1, 2025. All residential inspections for the 2025 and 2030 revaluations have resumed, and all properties have been inspected since 2015. They're currently inspecting properties that were last inspected in 2016. To date, 6,411 properties have been inspected, and about 10,000 remain for the 10-year inspection requirements. Statute requires that the assessor fully inspect each parcel once every 10 years. Litigation, the current market value of pending cases is $1.145 billion. Since the 2015 revaluation, 272 tax appeals have been resolved. Since the 2021 revaluation, the total tax loss on all tax appeals is $330,000 and change. Total of 21 tax appeals were withdrawn, 14 commercial and 7 residential from the 2021 revaluation. 2 additional tax appeals were filed on the 2023 ground list. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but if you do, refer them to Lauren, because I wouldn't be able to answer them. So I have a motion to accept the assessor's report.
I have a question,
Yes.
or just want to identify some
Yes, Ms.
information.
Moriarty.
I had, in follow-up to the report, the written report that we received in our packet, I did forward 2 questions to Lauren. I just want to make other members aware of it. First, that I was asking about the change in the grand list expected for this October, because we had 1.08% increase in our last budget. And just because the building permits are lower than in the prior year, and there is this coming change for the motor vehicle valuation, she does expect that the increase in the grand list for the next budget year will be lower than what we had in the current budget year. But I also thought this, at a future meeting, if she can update us on the impact of the legislative change on the valuation of motor vehicles.
Just to follow up, I did ask that question, and when we met with her, and she said, quite frankly, the changes are really non-significant for Greenwich and the motor vehicle tax changes, since they are not a huge portion of our grand list. So she doesn't anticipate a huge change there. but she can also address it when she comes back.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, it's been, in the absence of the assessor, it should be noted that Ms. Vasiliotis gave the report. It's moved to accept it by Ms. Vasiliotis, seconded by Leslie Tarkington. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, the assessor's report is accepted. We'll now move to the request for budget applications, the routine applications. I don't remember, do you read it or does Karen read it?
I think Karen reads routine.
Karen
I read no.
reads
Is that
the
correct?
the routines.
I do.
I've lost track.
Sorry,
I'll second it.
Okay, so this is request for budget applications, routine applications, HD1 Health, F405 various account number, amount of $175,099. Purpose is to approve use of a health workforce development grant. FI1 Finance, account number A130 2030, $55,000 transfer. FD1 Fire Department, account number 8208-57100, $6,315 transfer. Those are moved.
Second?
Okay, do we have any budget committee report?
No, we don't give,
You don't get
no, we don't
reports.
normally
Okay.
give budget committee reports on routine items.
Okay, sorry. It's been, the routine items have been moved by Ms. Vasiliotis, seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Any discussion? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, these are approved. We now move to the non-routine application, PW10, please.
Okay, so PW10 for the Department of Public Works, $450,000 for an approval to use for the Greenwich Avenue ADA. So the committee from the report from the committee is.
I'll second that just to get it
It's a
before
release of
us.
conditions, right, not approval.
This is, I'm sorry. Yes, this is improperly listed on our agenda. It needs to be changed to release of conditions.
Oh, correct, sorry.
So I was reading this and you're correct, thank you.
We missed that.
Yeah, okay. So I should have read from the Budget Committee report. The Commissioner of Public Works, Amy Siebert, presented this request to release conditions on the Greenwich Avenue ADA Improvement Project funding. She recapped the May 30th, 2024 public hearing, including design elements, parking space impact, consideration of side street ADA spaces, reuse of removed parking meter bases, and the functionality versus aesthetics of the proposed intersection bump outs. There was discussion about compliance with the latest ADA regulations, the proposed 19 accessible spaces on Greenwich Avenue itself, tree well sizing and trip hazards, additional lighting, and risk management. So this was, the committee voted 301 to recommend the release of conditions with a request for updated numbers on the total Greenwich Avenue parking spaces minus the seasonal no dining spaces as a non-routine item, and this motion carried. And we later were given the number of spaces that are used in the nodes, and I believe that was 43 in response to what was asked at the Budget Committee and the approval. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to,
Did you second it?
you want a second, Leslie Moriarty?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. I just want to note that we have Commissioner Siebert, Deputy Commissioner Michael, and the first selectman here. I'll also note that there's been a lot of information that's been gathered since this last came before us, which is why it's before us again. I would invite those three individuals to come forward. I think at this point, maybe you want to start the discussion, Karen? Or do you have any remarks to give us before? Mr. Camillo, I know you're trying to get to Todd's point or a cleanup.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, Mr. Chairman and members of the BET. I'm just going to lead off because I apologize for how I look, but I'm going to go be pulling weeds at the beach for about an hour, so I didn't want to do that in a suit. Before I turn it over to Jim and Amy, I just want to remind people that not only do we have to comply with federal law, but we also have a moral obligation to do this. And I also want to remind people who may not know that when I first got into this office in 2020, I received a letter from the Department of Justice about an issue that preceded my being in office about ADA compliance in Greenwich. And the letter was pretty blunt. And it was about an area over on the western side of town. We were out of compliance. It cost us $1.2 million, a little under $1.2 million, I believe, to fix it. But we also had a deadline that they gave us. And if we didn't do it, there would be a civil lawsuit against the town. I also want to remind people that was in all the papers all over the country and how embarrassing that was to our town. So I ask you all today to do the right thing by law and because of that moral obligation, but also because we love our town and we don't want to see it dragged in through the mud with something that, to me, should be a layup. So with that, again, unless anyone has any questions, I'll turn it over to Amy and Jim, and I'll head to the beach.
Do you have any remarks, or should we just start with discussion on our part? Thank you, Fred.
Why don't you let us
Enjoy
know
your work.
what you'd like to discuss? I think, as you said, there've been all kinds of things flying around, so let us know.
Okay, any questions or discussion by members of the board, please?
Harry, yeah, I'd like to ask a few questions of
Sure.
Amy
Oh, yeah.
and Jim. So, is it your understanding that the utility work for Greenwich Avenue is near completion? And when I say utility, I mean Aquarion finishing their work. So are we almost done with the work that's necessary, that is causing, this disruption to the avenue now?
So, yeah. I believe so, yes.
Okay, so secondly, am I right in thinking that before we repave the street, which has been significantly torn up and patched during this process, that you want to bring the avenue into ADA compliance? Is that accurate?
Yes, I think what we have been trying to do, if we look at the avenue, if we look at the projects we've had for some time, is bring the avenue as a whole into good condition. I think folks have seen some sidewalk work that we're trying to do. We're trying to improve sidewalks, tree wells, the pavement, give it a lift.
So,
After all this.
Okay, thank you. And so the point I guess I'm trying to get at is before we repave the avenue, the ADA compliance work needs to be completed. Is that right?
That's always been our understanding from our training on the rules through DOT, Highway Association, Yukon. I'm trying to think who else we've had training with. It's always been the guidance that we've gotten, right or wrong. Some people have noted perhaps we've been trained incompletely, maybe is a way to say it, but our understanding has been we bring things into compliance. It also makes sense when you think about it. If we're replacing sidewalk and replacing pavement, the time to do it, the time is before, so that you're not going in there later and tearing up good pavement to put in new curbs or to change things. So it seemed to us to make sense to do it as a whole. Again, we're not here to This has been one thing I would say, maybe speaking out of school a little bit, is, we're not here to make everybody upset or create a lot of contention. We're trying to do what makes sense and is an approach that we've used in other sidewalk and roadway repaving projects we've done around town.
So final question. Would you say that there's immediacy to moving forward? So because you can't do the ADA compliance work, because you can't repave until you do the ADA compliance work, there's immediacy to this decision. Is that fair?
That's certainly what we've understood. I think some folks have said, no, you can do the paving and not touch the intersection ramps. That's not our understanding, but if somebody wants to, say that's the case and.
Would it cost more money if we were to repave and then have to go back, do the ADA compliance work, and then have to repave again? So that would
Probably.
cost more money, wouldn't it?
It could.
Okay, so-
It seemed to us to make sense to put this together, again, based on our training, based on the information we have. I almost feel like DPW has been accused of trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes here. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to fix these sidewalks, bring them into compliance. To us, it seems like the right thing to do. Try to meet the best standards, the standards we have today. We've discussed this a great deal internally about how much we've learned over the years, how we've gotten better at the designs. Our contractors are better at putting them in. We don't normally want to sit before a public meeting and talk about where our failings are, where we maybe haven't done it right in the past. Not usually what the guidance we're given to do that. So that's our hope for this. We hope folks will be ready to see the avenue get that full facelift, but.
So any delay is either going to cost the town money or inconvenience in that the avenue will look like hell because it'll be all patchy, and while we're waiting for this board to approve the funds to move forward.
That sounded like an observation. Sorry, was that a question? Was that-
Would you agree with that?
It's a potential, sure. Yeah. And again, we're not trying to be smart Alex here. Again, I think you guys know DPW, we've tried to always be we're dealing with infrastructure. Infrastructure is infrastructure. It's for everybody. We've tried to be Switzerland with these things, as it were, if you take my meaning. So it seems to us to make sense to do this. If what we're understanding is that the goal is to leave sidewalk ramps as they are today, so to not touch them and obtain further information about evaluation of them, leave them alone and just leave them there until such time as we touch them in future, at which point they need to be changed? Is that really the goal when you're repaving and redoing all the sidewalks up and down the avenue? It didn't seem to us as engineers to make sense, and it didn't go along with how we've been trained in the regulations, what we've gotten to date or our understanding. But, the goal is to, like we said, to bring it into compliance, just accessible design.
Karen?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, Elliot and Amy, and I just want to walk through a little bit. On Friday, Ms. Tarkington and I met with Amy Siebert, Jim Michael, and Mike Kisnek to discuss ADA and the Avenue at the urging of our chair. We asked the question, are the curb cuts that currently exist in compliance with the 1991 or 2010 law? And the answer was, quite frankly, surprising. The answer was, we don't know. It was before our time here. We don't have the documentation. Now, I understand that this information may change again today, but that was what was said on Friday. Since our last meeting, a constituent actually pointed out that the ADA law has what's known as a safe harbor clause, which essentially says if you are in compliance with the 1991 or 2010 standards for curb cuts, you don't need to upgrade them when you repave. In fact, it looks like the state DOT actually utilized the safe harbor clause because when they repaved Putnam, East and West Putnam Avenue, they didn't touch the ADA curbing along that stretch. We provided DPW with a 2015 Q&A document prepared by the federal government that indicates that to be the case. There was some discussion that perhaps the state requires upgrades, but nothing was presented to show that to be the case. So as of today, we still don't know definitively whether the safe harbor provision applies to the Greenwich Avenue repaving project. Now, I want to address also what the first selectman said. Of course, he stated that not only do we have to comply with the law, but we have a moral obligation. And he cited a letter from the Justice Department in the western part of town that we were out of compliance. There's no doubt that we want to be legally compliant. That's not the question here. But the first selectman also has been quoted as saying that there's a lot of misinformation out there. He's also stated that people are sick and tired of projects being relitigated by this board. I am too. DPW has an obligation to know and present to us what is required by the law when these projects come before us so we can make informed decisions. And that hasn't happened here. There is a safe harbor provision that's built into the law, and questions and answers that were provided by the federal government state that if the curb cuts were compliant with the 1991 ADA or 2010 ADA requirements, then the upgrades proposed by DPW are not required. Again, it seems to say it here in black and white, but yet we don't know whether they were in compliant with the 1991 or 2010 standards, and I find it incredulous to think that we put in curb cuts at however much money we spent that were not in compliant. So that's not an answer. We have anecdotal evidence that we were in compliance. A 2010 study presumably done to determine whether curbs were in compliance with ADA in advance of the new regulations concluded that the curbs on Greenwich Avenue should be reevaluated in 5 to 10 years. So what will get lost in this discussion today and vote today is that our colleagues across the aisles will spin this as Republicans are against the disabled, that we are going to spend more money, that we are, that we are just not, that we are obstructionists and that we don't want change, and that's not the case. We should be looking at what is required, whether or not we need to spend more money, and these will be millions of dollars, and it will set a precedent for the town, and we should know that, we should know what we are funding. Republicans have funded ADA compliance effort in our town and our schools. That's not the issue. At the end of the day, to put a pause on this project until we can get all the answers that we are asking for, I don't think is delaying this unnecessarily. It would appear by our 2020 transition plan that those that preceded the current DPW staff understood the safe harbor provision when they put the curb cuts in. We all should understand its application before spending millions of taxpayer dollars that may or may not, and I repeat, may not, because we all, quite frankly, don't have a clue based on what was presented. We may not need to be spent since we already may be in compliance according to the law. No, I'm also going to say one more thing. My colleagues across the aisle will likely state we approve this expenditure and the only thing on the table is the release of conditions. If it weren't for this project, we should have rejected the appropriation in May. They argue that DPW has met the conditions and the money should be released. The issue before us today is whether the conditions have been met. So let's examine the conditions. The first was a widely publicized public hearing, check, that was done. 2, presentation of schematics, including a parking plan. I can say check, that was done. For the 8 intersections to be modified, any changes in pedestrian ramps, street layouts, et cetera, I question whether this condition is satisfied because do the existing curbs need to be modified in the first place? So I'll put a question mark there. For overall lighting and beautification plan, again, it's questionable. There was no lighting plan that was presented. And in fact, you'll hear that our POCD required some additional lighting on the avenue to make it safe. 5, plan to include additional safety improvements. Again, questionable. I didn't see any additional safety improvements in the plan that were included. So I personally do not think the conditions were met for those reasons, and I will be voting no if this comes to a vote. I also, at future time, will have a motion that will ask this body to consider.
Mr. Selps? And then Ms. Aurora.
I'm very disappointed, to be honest. This is the first time I'm hearing about the safe harbor issue. We had a law committee meeting yesterday. This issue was not even discussed. I don't hear from my colleagues that this has been discussed with the town law department. I don't hear that there's an opinion about compliance. What I hear is that there's a suggestion from a constituent that there may be a safe harbor. That at the best is anecdotal and at worst is hearsay. It's an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted. We clearly must get to the bottom of this issue, but I think the way that it is being brought is beyond disappointing. If these issues had been presented, we all would have had a chance to debate them. We would have had a chance to look at the authorities. And frankly, we might have had a chance to discuss them with DPW. But now we're being presented with this fait accompli that says, oh no, we think that there's a grandfather clause that says that this may be applicable. This is just no way to run a consultative body. It is grievously, grievously disappointing to me. But I want to return to Mr. Camillo's points, because I do think that they bear emphasis for the wider community. My colleagues may say that they're doing the right thing by delaying this, but I think there's very little doubt about the message that we send to the public, which is no matter how we want to spin this, this is a delay. There is the moral issue. This is not the town's only ADA enforcement problem. The Board of Ed recently released a report that says there's $30 million of ADA that's needed at the schools. Every time we delay or defer ADA, we send a message to our community that this is not a top priority. I think that I've been in the 3 years that I've been on this board, I think I've been a careful steward of the town's money. I don't think that anyone would say that I'm a radical or a crazy. But I think that ADA is a priority for this community, and I think that if this is going to be delayed, which is what I hear is likely to be offered by our colleagues, we need to get to the bottom of this quickly. And beyond that, there is the fate of Greenwich Avenue. As my colleague, Mr. Alchek, has pointed out, if this, while we examine this issue, Greenwich Avenue remains unpaved, we may decide that we're not going to change the intersections. I recognize that's a possibility. But we owe it also to the citizens of this community to make a decision about this. I think the issues are real. I think that notwithstanding the fact that there may be an opinion about a grandfather clause, I think there's certainly a risk of Justice Department enforcement. I remind this community and this board, we've already had some exposure with that. There was a civil action brought on the condition of the old Greenwich School. As Mr. Camillo pointed out, this community has been in the attention of the crosshairs of the Department of Justice in the past. I certainly don't want to see the town become the subject of a DOJ enforcement. That's not in anyone's best interest, nor are the reputational interest issues that Mr. Camillo referred to something that I want to incur. But we've got to come to a point on this. We've got to come to a decision. I feel pretty strongly that the right decision is to adopt DPW's plan and to get it done. I, along with other members of this board, have met with Ms. Siebert and Mr. Michael. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an engineer, and so I'm not going to be able to pass judgment on whether they're the perfect solutions, but I have faith in them. They are hardworking, well-meaning public servants of long standing, and as Ms. Siebert said, they're not trying to play sides in this. They're trying to be Switzerland. The issue about this purported safe harbor is brand-new information. I'd certainly, I'm, as some of you know, I'm a practicing lawyer for a few years now. I'd certainly be willing to see this information. I'm willing to consider it, but we have to come to a conclusion on this. This is no way to run a body, and this is no way for us to manage this project, and I am as disappointed as I've been on anything in a long time.
All right, Ms.
I
Fasilides.
I don't
respond, and then
disagree with
Mrs.
anything
Aurora.
you've said, Stephen, and quite frankly, the information has been coming in quickly and just came in actually late this morning as well. So, to say that we've been holding anything back is not in fact the case. I think that what we are saying is that, yes, there is a safe harbor provision. I would be happy to share it with this whole board, but I do think that we need to understand what it is and understand what we're doing as we're spending money. I also want to address that ADA has been funded by this board. Yes, there has been issues at the Old Greenwich School. We funded over, I would say, Democratic opposition funding for ADA compliance there. Riverside was funded for ADA compliance there. Our schools have, when our schools have requested ADA funding, we have been funding it, and we will continue to fund it. We don't want to be out of compliance. That's not the goal here. The goal is compliance, whatever that compliance is. But I think that we have an obligation to understand how our monies are being spent and whether they are being spent in the right ways to be in ADA compliance. That's all I'm saying.
Ms. Aurora?
Yeah, I just wanted to, present a little bit of a different perspective. And I know there's a discussion we're having of what's legally required and if we are in compliance, not in compliance. And I think we still need some answers there.
Do you want to be recognized?
But, so I think many of you know my
Scott,
my best friend in town.
And
And she
Moriarty.
lives, Harry, I can hear you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. My closest friend is ADA, she has ADA accessibility issues, is on a scooter. I've known her for 20 years. I've mentioned her before in meetings, so close that I got her to move to Greenwich 3 years ago. She's on a scooter, she has MS, and I am very aware of issues that, I've traveled with her internationally in the city, walked many different courses, and I usually don't talk BET with her, but I did ask her on this very specific issue if, A, she was ever asked for her opinion as a Greenwich resident, what kind of accessibility concerns she has on the avenue. Didn't look like she was. I'm not sure what the process is when we make some of these enhancements, and, that's separate. But I asked her if she would walk the avenue with me on her scooter, and we've done this before, but in a very formulaic way, go down the entire intersection. We did this last week. It took about an hour, and we crossed every intersection back and forth, and I just asked her for her feedback as to what, are these enhancements that are being proposed. I had a map of all of, the DPW's plan. I said, what do you think? Can you give me your insights? And she uses a cane sometimes and sometimes a scooter, depending on the distance. And I asked her what her main concerns were. So, right off the bat, the top of the avenue, that's an interesting intersection. Coming in, I think I know we're reducing the width. Maybe it's still going to stay 2 lanes, but looks like it's going to become single. That was a big concern for her, both as a driver and as a crosser. She liked the curb as it was, but I thought it could be cleaned up. But I really want to give you the feedback on the bump out, specifically on Elm Street. And, this is again, one person's perspective. It's not every person who's on a scooter. So she's lower, right? So her eyesight is lower. She thought the visibility is incredibly reduced when you go around because of all the plantings. It wasn't a straight shot. She told me she actually almost avoids that. That's the one that makes her the most nervous, the Elm Street. But other areas like where Mediterraneo is towards the bottom, we could probably benefit from the intersection. And I share these insights with you specifically because I think there are members of this community that I don't think have been surveyed for their feedback. So some of the solutions we're producing or that are being proposed may not have the consequences that you're trying to achieve, right? It's not to say that we shouldn't do it. I think from my perspective at least, whether or not they're required or in law or not guidelines, our objective is to make the avenue more accessible, or all of our places more accessible. And I'll share with you some very low-hanging fruit that have not been resolved. For example, every retail store does not have a ramp. She couldn't go into, for example, the main coffee store that I like to go to. I never had noticed that, right? That has not been addressed. There's lots of cracks on the sidewalk. There's lots of obstacles because of outdoor dining, all the chairs that are out, to have a scooter going up and down. Those are things that are not as part of this plan, but those are things she worries about. And the other interesting point she mentioned to me is she's also a driver. She drives her kids there, they run errands. And as a driver, her sight is extremely reduced on some of the areas where the bump outs are, where the roads are. And again, the point of sharing the perspective is, again, it's one member. She is a resident, she's a member of this community, has never been asked what her feedback is. So I'm not sure if the 12 of us here, I heard Mr. Selb say, well, this plan is what's required. This is what we need to do for the community. I don't know if this is the perfect solution. Jim, I talked to you as well, and I asked you, are there alternative solutions? Have we considered alternative ideas? And I'm not sure we have. I don't know what other plans have been considered, who's been surveyed, who's been asked. I would just like more information. I certainly would like to see Greenwich Avenue as accessible as possible, along with all parts of our town, all municipal buildings, all public areas. But I want to make sure that the solution we're trying to solve is actually being solved by what we're doing. So putting all the technical piece aside, I would love more information. I mean, the legal one I think we need, but I would like to see some alternative plans, especially at the top, and some of alternative ideas for what we're thinking about where the bump outs are being proposed. So I just wanted to share that insight. It's not to say I don't know how we're voting, who's voting, or how we're voting, but I did want to share that feedback with you because I think it's the community, it's the part of the community that you're trying to solve this problem for.
Mr. Cowell?
Thank you. I have a couple of comments. First of all, I have to say, I'm very disappointed in our process here as a legislative body. I've been involved in other government efforts, and I can't believe that we're having a meeting and this is a very important issue, and this is the first time I'm hearing about these particular issues, that something like this could be raised moments before the meeting begins without any proper notice, without any further information, with no chance to prepare, with no chance to rebut, with no chance to actually come up with different arguments. I mean, I think it's outrageous that I've been called to a meeting and I have to all of a sudden deliberate on something that I've had no opportunity to prepare or study. It's just not right. And I object. I object to having to scramble at the last minute to come up with an informed opinion about this. The second thing I want to mention is that my esteemed colleague, Vice Chair Vasiliotis, I sort of agree with all of the objections that she said that we would raise, and I will raise them. I do believe that as a body, we voted in favor of this. Our Republican colleagues voted in favor of this funding. You may say, well, we didn't have proper information, but we did vote in favor of it. It was part of our budget. And the fact now that you want to reopen this discussion and provide opinions, to me, is a symptom of actually of personal preferences. Now, all of a sudden, biasing our decision-making. We are not engineers. We have a department that does this work. They've given us their work. We've questioned it. We've asked about it. We had hearings. I have constituents also who are disabled. I've spoken with them. They're really upset that we haven't done anything yet, let alone that, we would now be considering not moving forward. So I understand that my colleague, Ms. Aurora, has spoken with one of her constituents who has questions. But I assure you that the majority of the people that I've spoken with who are disabled or senior or elderly, who have problems on the avenue have been waiting for a long time for us to be taking action and will be extremely upset if we don't move forward. Finally, I would just say that I think that there's enormous risks with this decision. You might think that it's prudent, but I don't think it's prudent. I think that, in fact, if we delay further at this stage, I think we're opening ourselves to financial risks, to legal risks, and quite frankly, to risks that our constituents in town will really lobby against this. I think we lose credibility as a body. So I just don't understand why we continue not to take action in favor of our disabled or senior citizens who have every right to access this avenue in a safe and compliant way. And I don't understand why we continue to question this. To me, it seems pretty clear that ultimately underneath, there just seems to be a resistance to taking action, and we're seeking some pathways not to act. And I'm sorry that I have to make this statement, but I feel compelled to do so. I'm kind of I'm at a loss as to how to respond to my colleagues on this, and I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Ms. Moriarty?
So I think I agree with everything Scott just said. This is a total failure of this board. We are showing that we are a dysfunctional body, can't work together, can't get the information we need to make decisions that have been on our agenda now 2 meetings in a row. For to say that we met on Friday, you identified information, nothing was disclosed, I don't believe, to our chair, who is a member of the same party, if we're working by caucuses, and nothing to the rest of the board until the start of this meeting, is just, it's astounding to me. And I think this board has lost all credibility. Let me get to the heart of the issue here. Clearly, our colleagues are defensive because Ms. Vasiliotis decided that she had to try to guess what we're going to say in response to her comment, but I'll let that go. But what's the standard we're using here to expect our departments to operate? So we are a community of 60,000 people. We're no longer just a, representative town meeting is, we don't have every resident sitting at meetings. And so, yes, in probably every decision we make, we will find people supportive of the recommendation and people who are not supportive of the recommendation. And I think we all want to do the right thing here, or I'm not sure of that, actually. But to me, this decision is simple. There may be a legal standard which Greenwich can escape doing the right thing, but is that the Greenwich we want? Is that the Greenwich we should have? This should be the easiest decision in the world, that we want to try to make the avenue and all of other aspects of our town as accessible to as many people as we can make them. And there is legal requirements around here, but that shouldn't be the only standard we're using. We should be using moral standards, as Mr. Camillo said. We should be using rational standards of what can we do to improve pedestrian safety. And as I have said to some members of this board, this is an imperfect solution. We are not able to meet every single need of car traffic, of pedestrian traffic, of retailers' needs, of restaurant users' needs. There has to be compromises one way or another, but I think we don't compromise at the ability of safety of the disabled or seniors, or even the safety of pedestrians probably should exceed the requirements of traffic, but of car traffic on the avenue. However, nothing in this plan reduces lane widths more than the 12 feet that is through the majority part of the avenue now. We talk about bump outs, but that's only one facet of this plan. We have issues with the location of the handicap spaces and the way they're accessed and the curb cuts there. I'm not sure if there's objections to everything or not, but as I said from the beginning, I think this should be the easiest decision for this board to move ahead and to trust the engineering aspects of the projects and the fact that those engineers are continuing to look at these issues as they move forward with the implementation. And this should absolutely be approved today. It would avoid any financial and legal risk, as Scott has mentioned already, that this town would be susceptible to if we don't act. But this is the fact that we're arguing about a new issue being raised. It sounds like the people who are putting up the objections are just trying to do everything they can to block this from moving forward, and I just think that is the wrong direction for this board.
Anybody else? Yes, Ms. Jansen.
Yes, I'd like to talk about the process, because I mentioned it in the last BET meeting, and I will repeat again. Given the history of the particular avenue bump outs, where the RTM rejected a municipal improvement, and for many of the reasons cited by a cross-section of residents, stakeholders, and what have you, it would have been an abundance of caution on the part of our department here to present in the budget a sketch, a drawing, information on what were the 8 intersections going to look like. So when the BET came up with the public hearing, that hearing produced tremendous pushback from residents, from stakeholders, from the same people from the Avenue, the Havemeyer Arch situation. I don't understand why we haven't had a second review from an outside opinion. Given, again, this isn't an avenue that 90% of the residents aren't traversing. This is Greenwich Avenue, our central business district. We have commercial companies, we have residents, we have very popular retailers and restaurants. This touches most residents of all avenues in our town. I do believe a second review would be prudent, would be thoughtful, and would address the feedback from the many, many residents that we have heard from. And I would like to later present a motion that has an outside review of a proposed alternative implementation, particularly to some certain points. The top of the avenue is at the top of the list. I do not think my colleagues are opposed to all aspects of this implementation, but there are some areas of concern. They have been expressed, they have been ignored. So it would be prudent and it would be thoughtful to have a second review. Thank you.
Mr. Deschamps?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to repeat a lot of the comments that have already been made. I do want to just simplify the matter. We are making the simple immensely complex, and it's at the cost of our most vulnerable community, the disabled members of our community. It's very disappointing to me that this board approved in a bipartisan way the funding for this project with conditions. Those conditions were met, and then this board rejected that funding recently. It's back on the agenda today, and it sounds like it's going to be rejected again, or some other motion's going to be made. News to me, by the way. I've heard nothing of this safe harbor up until today. Personally, I've heard nothing of a safe harbor. It certainly seems to me that this was something is sought after, looking to find some reason to again delay a project that we as a group had approved in a bipartisan way. It was also mentioned that certain members of our community that we know weren't consulted. Well, that is going to be true of almost any project this town endeavors to pursue. It's my understanding that the first Selectmen's Advisory Committee for people with disabilities was consulted. Is that true or false? Could you please verify that for the record?
That's true.
Again, please?
That's true. And we'd be delighted to speak to anyone.
That seems to me like an entirely appropriate process for any citizens, and some were mentioned, that are concerned about this issue, and rightfully so, that they seek the benefit of the advisory committee's participation and engage in that way. You have a process that you have followed. You've had community input. We asked you questions about that community input. You listened to the community, you incorporated that feedback. And yet here we are, as was said earlier, injecting what people have as personal preferences. It is not the function, the mission of this board to inject personal preferences into every single project that comes before it. It's our job to fund projects that come before us that seek the proper funding, that have gone through the proper governance channels, which this has done. We're making the simple complex. We're making what should be easy immensely hard, costing time and money and inconveniencing our citizens because we're not getting the project done. I'm talking about just the paving of Greenwich Avenue, let alone making it ADA accessible. This is what's simple about it. Currently, as it stands now, Greenwich Avenue is not ADA compliant, period. It is not ADA compliant. And what we're trying to do, as I understand it, the town is trying to do is pave Greenwich Avenue and bring it up to code, bring it up to compliance. That question has been asked and answered, asked and answered, asked and answered. I don't know how many times. I think you've come before us 6 times or more on this project. It should get our full funding, our full support, and I'll be voting to fund this project.
Harry, can I just,
Is there anybody else who hasn't been heard from? Mr. Weisbrod and then Ms.
I
Aurora.
just want to respond to Matt.
Oh, excuse me, would you mind if she responds to Matt? Okay, go ahead,
Just really
Ms.
quick,
Aurora.
Matt, I actually asked my friend about the disability committee, if she knew about it. So I think one thing our town could benefit from is, she didn't know that the committee existed, that there were even ways to reach out. I don't know if you could share how many members are on this committee, what they do to reach out to other members of the ADA community, because obviously we know who they are because they have a pass, right? Can you share that information? How many?
So you can access all kinds of information about them through the town's website. How many people are on there? Jim, you've been going to the meetings a lot.
I mean, typically there's about 15 to 20 people per meeting on the meetings each.
How many members are on the committee, the
I
first
don't know
selectmen's
off the top of my
committee?
head, so I don't want to tell you the wrong
It's a
number.
committee of the first selectmen's.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
it's a handful is my guess. But I
So-
guess the point I'm making, Amy, is that committee, she was not even aware that the committee
Sure.
existed.
Listen, I can understand that. Sorry to interrupt you, but,
Yeah.
I think you guys have heard us many a time say how for example, we have public meetings, and we get people saying, we didn't know about your public meeting. Now, we do our best these days with putting things in the paper, trying to get things in the Free Press, the Sentinel, the Times,
Yeah.
through neighborhood associations, through the RTM, through the BET, through all the means and methods we can think of, and we still find people saying, gee, we didn't know about it. So we always encourage people, certainly get in touch, let us know.
I'm just suggesting
you know,
a potential.
By all
yeah,
means.
Potential idea, since we know who they are, since they have permits, maybe there's a way to proactively reach out.
We don't know,
Well,
we don't have that information, but we'd be
somebody
happy
in
to
town,
talk to
yeah.
you, Nisha, and talk to
Yeah.
your friend, and we'd be delighted to hear of more and better ways. What I do know about that committee is that they invite in a number of different stakeholders.
Yeah.
So they have different groups that come in. When you see their agendas, they have different entities and groups come in to talk about a variety of concerns. So I'm sure they'd be delighted to augment that, to expand their knowledge of
Yeah, no, and I
folks
appreciate that you guys are balancing many different residents' needs with the proposed plan. I just think that it's important to understand, I'm hearing my colleagues say, well, we're looking for technical reasons. I will say part of the condition of this release was to do that public hearing. And I heard some of my colleagues last time say, well, we did the public hearing checkbox, but really the purpose of the public hearing was to hear from the public. And many members of the public expressed concerns with the plan that was presented first at this meeting. So to say, well, we had the public hearing, the condition has been met, is really just a technical excuse to say, well, we're not really going to take action from the concerns that we heard at the public hearing, and maybe another public hearing is needed, maybe an alternative proposal is required. I don't think for a moment any of us are saying we do not want to make the avenue more accessible. Whether or not is legally required is a separate question. I personally am saying I do not care if it is legally required or not. If it makes life better or more accessible, I would be in support of it, and I am not clear that it does. I understand that some stakeholders have reached out to some of our constituents. My closest friend, I spend 3 to 4 evenings with her every week, right? So for 20 years, right? I have known this person for a very long time. I don't know who on this board can say they have a similar person that they spend so much time with, and I see that, right? So I am saying you're not resolving it for this one person. Yes, she does not represent the entire community, but the point I'm making is I don't think we have surveyed everyone. Are there alternative solutions, and are there plans that, we could potentially consider? And I don't know, and I don't know what the best way to do it is, but I hear you. This is not a technical reason. I hear, Matt, what you're saying. This is not a technical reason to not do this, but I think we're using the public hearing discussion as also a technical reason to come back to you.
Mr. Weisbrod?
So if I'm the public right now watching this, listening to this, I'm just shaking my head and saying, who are these people? What is this BET? Who are these people? And so to those people who may be watching or listening, I would say what we are or should be is the finance board of the town of Greenwich. The charter says that the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall be responsible for the proper administration of the financial affairs of the town. Financial affairs. A vote was taken back in May to approve funding for ADA compliance on Greenwich Avenue. The vote had certain conditions. The vote was passed, funds were appropriated, the matter went as it should to the RTM. The RTM had plenty of opportunity. If they didn't like the nature of the vote, it's in their purview to say all the things they may want to say about anything, safe harbors, bump outs, this and that, and all the rest of it. They didn't. RTM voted to appropriate the funds. We then came back before this BET to the Budget Committee to review whether the conditions were met in order to proceed with the appropriation. The vote was made at the Budget Committee just a few weeks ago without any dissent. There was no dissent to prove the notion that the conditions were met. And then lo and behold, we're facing all this kind of, discussion that is out of place and out of time. We just heard from our first selectman. He could not have been clearer. He noted, if you want to be responsible for the financial affairs of the town of Greenwich, we ought to be mindful of a letter that he cited that we received in 2020 from the Department of Justice saying that there were matters here that needed to be addressed. He said that we have to comply, this is our first selectman, with the law, and that we have a moral obligation. He said this is a layup. We need to fix this. We need to do the right thing. We don't want to drag our town through the embarrassment of seeing this in the papers across the country that we are opposed to the requirements that are set forth about ADA. This is what our first selectman said. We're hearing discussions here that are some here saying, well, we're not opposed to this. We just want to vote against it. We don't want to delay it, but we want new alternative plans that may take months to unfold. It's been said that millions of dollars can be spent here. Let's be clear. The appropriation request was for $800,000. It was cut to $550,000. That's the matter. That's the financial aspect that is the purview of this board. Please, let's stay within the purview of this board. Let's serve this town as a finance board. That is our role, and we're not doing it very well right now. Thank you.
Ms. Tarkington.
So many Greenwich residents and others from neighboring communities are attracted to shop, dine, work in the jewel of the town's retail centers, downtown Greenwich Avenue. It's a major attraction of Greenwich Avenue is its reputation for safety and accessibility for all. And I mean for all. And when we talk about accessibility, we have to remember that within our own town, 17% of our residents are seniors, 65 or older, and that many of them are very proud. They now will be parking in the remaining parking spaces available to them. It's not, only the ADA spaces, but in addition to the spaces that have been removed because of the restaurant nodes or pods or whatever they're calling them these days. Since our last meeting, together with Ms. Fasciolotis, but others were invited, I met with the DPW, with Amy, Jim, and Michael, and questions were raised that, in my opinion, were not succinctly answered as to whether the ADA requirements have already been met, and as confirmed by what Ms. Fasciolotis has already stated. I do think we need a better opinion on the safe harbor issue. And by the way, that report, I believe, is posted online and has been for some years. So I don't know why my colleagues seem to be questioning some of this. The town is implementing a multi-million-dollar project on Greenwich Avenue improvement plan. And, I asked at this meeting, what is the cost of this project? Is it $3 million, $4 million? And when I add up the dollars, just that are specifically identified for Greenwich Avenue, it's that's currently in, fully appropriated, it's somewhere between $3 and $3.5 million. But what we were told is that the DPW is using highway maintenance funds that were excess from other accounts for the project to date. Again, that's what we were told. In addition, these other funds will be available. So as the town is implementing this multi-million-dollar project, if we go back to BET decision day 1, this condition, or a condition, was approved on this particular item that asked for a municipal improvement as the subject to release. It was a very simple condition. Later we were told, oh, you can't do that, even though municipal improvement had already been used before, and there were other reasons too, which to me didn't necessarily have logic. But then this other condition was then prepared, and it was approved unanimously by this board, all 5 aspects of it, in decision day number 3. So if the municipal improvement had been, approved and remained in place, this board wouldn't be involved in some of these decisions. These decisions would have public scrutiny, public questions by perhaps the boards and commissions who should be considering them. And, and maybe they, in that process, will be raising some of the other questions that I've had, and I've expressed them. They're not the first time. Others have heard me talk about them. And in fact, you can actually go back to some of our approvals for the Elm Street and Arch Street. And I've always been concerned about the lighting on Greenwich Avenue. This is not Leslie Tarkington's concern. This was part of the POCD, the Downtown Planning Committee, and is in a report that was incorporated with the POCD. And that indicated that lighting, we talked about lighting, it talked about that it needs to be maintained. Abutting tree limbs should be proved to maximize illumination. And if you walk up and down Greenwich Avenue, you can see that in certain locations, the trees and the lighting are co-located. And the trees definitely, you can't see that at night. I mean, during the day, it looks pretty. And at night, it really limits the lighting and safety for all. So, again, there are locations, which was documented, that can be labeled as black spots, and they need to be addressed. At that point in time, they also talked about cobra lighting on 2 intersections on diagonal corners. So I think, I'm not going to elaborate on that report or what's documented in 2 pages. I would like also further to say that in MI approved, I would have hoped that one of the issues would have come up that no one in this board is addressing, and I think this is really out of our bailiwick. But, our current POCD says all of Greenwich Avenue is a National Historic District that will be preserved. And that section of the POCD, under the Central Greenwich and Downtown Greenwich report, page of the report, page 95, provides additional elaboration. I believe that MI would have helped and addressed this issue, but I will be making a motion later on that this go back to the Historic District Commission. There is a filed, whatever we call it, approval by Washington on this plan. The request includes the land as well as the buildings. All buildings are identified. And so I think that, a review would be appropriate because, we're also need to make sure that we remain compliant with that. I will make a motion later on.
Ms. Fassiliotis?
I've heard a lot of things being flung about here this morning, and I just want to unpack a few. This discussion, according to my colleagues, is to escape doing the right thing. And I would suggest that's false. No one is suggesting that. We all want an accessible avenue. There are moral and rational standards. What does that really even mean? The avenue is either accessible or it's not. And the only reason we are having this discussion right now is because of somebody's interpretation of ADA. So let's get it right. Does the safe harbor provision, is it there or isn't it? I don't know. We've heard that some improvements have made it worse for the disabled by one comments. Greenwich Avenue is not ADA compliant. How do we know that? We don't know. We have curb cuts currently. I don't know if they meet the standards from 91 or not. No one was able to answer that. I agree, we are the finance board, but before we spend millions of dollars, we need to understand what we are fixing. We need to fix this, it was said. Well, what do we need to fix? I'm not sure that we even know that. So this is not about delay. This is about getting it right because it will set precedent for the entire town. And I just, if had I known this, and I think if any of us had known this information in May, which we didn't know, I don't know if anybody would have agreed to pass the funding until we had more information.
Anybody else? Yeah, Ms. Tolchak?
I would just like to leave everyone with a quote from Harry Truman. There is some risk involved in action. There always is. But there is far more risk in failure to act. We are taking enormous risk by not moving forward. We have plenty of information to make this decision.
Anybody else? I just have a final question, because yesterday I drove by the top of the avenue and there were pylons out there. Were you reevaluating the turning radius?
You mean at the top of the avenue?
At the top of the avenue?
I think we have them laid out to take a look at what the draft design that we have for there is, and we've been taking some various, televising it as we can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's 2 lanes, just to clarify a little bit, it is still 2 lanes, and it lets us then look at various assertions that have been made about turning movements and how things function through there. We can actually see it in action.
So did you run another fire truck through there?
There's all kinds of vehicles have been going through there, trucks,
Okay,
cars.
but you weren't
you name it.
reevaluating?
No, we're taking a look at it. Let's see, it gives us a chance to actually see how it functions live.
Okay,
So we can have video of it and we can look at it,
okay.
which is a
Thank
good
you.
thing. Should we just let it lie here? One thing
Go
I
ahead.
wanted to add a little bit, if I may. I had no idea that I should have joined a debate club as a young person, sorry. But to lighten the mood a little bit here, I know I'm going to a cardiologist with my mother this afternoon. I think I'll check myself in at the same time. But we can understand a lot of these questions. We're happy to have input. The team has been looking at various designs for quite a long time. We look at these things with respect to the most current standards. There are many things that have, as I've learned more about it from our design team, many things have stayed the same. Sometimes things tweak, change. Yes, buildings change as buildings are updated. Mention was made of cracks in the sidewalk. That's why we wanted to go down the avenue, replace sidewalks. We try not to draw attention to sidewalk defects. We just like to fix them. When we touch them, while it may be that someone says there's a safe harbor if it's in good condition, maybe if it meets this, that, and the other, as I read the safe harbor, again, we got some guidance, thank you, on Friday that showed us something. It seemed to imply to me that it said, if something had been constructed before a certain time, X, Y, Z, but if you had touched it after a certain date, after I think it was a 2012, if you had touched it, you had to bring it up. There are a lot of convoluted language in there, which would require you to do a lot of evaluation. It's been our feeling that let's bring things up to standard as we go. We'd like to replace these things. If we replace it, we meet the standard. You don't get to leave it that way forever. That's, if I understand the safe harbor right. It doesn't mean you get to leave it in 91 or whatever, forever. Maybe I'm wrong. Karen, you're an attorney. You've got a great brain in there. We'll hear more about that, but that's not our understanding. That's not how we're trained. A couple of other little tidbits. Connecticut DOT, as we understand it, is coming back. There was a little comment saying they're not doing their work, but as we understand it, they're coming back into town at some point to do that.
Yeah, it's a combination of they come back after they do their paving and do all the ramps. They've done that on the east side of town when they did the paving a couple of years ago. They've done all those ramps then. In addition, we have 2 different projects that the town is working on in the stretch that they just repaved, and they're aware of those that are getting state and federal funding for, and those are going to address some of those ramps as well through that stretch. So those are planned projects that are already on the books that they're anticipating are going to be completed. And so therefore, that's the reason that they didn't do those ramps when they just recently repaved this spring.
So thank you very much. I don't know if you have any other questions for us, or did you have anything you
Thank
wanted
you.
to add?
You have a motion to present?
I do.
Can I, just point of order, we have this on our agenda. I think there hasn't been a motion, there has been a motion introduced for the release of conditions, so that's on the table. Is what's coming an amendment to that motion?
Well, let's hear what it is.
Well, I'm moving to postpone.
So if we already have a motion on the table,
Yeah, you can move to postpone.
That's,
that's permitted.
Yep.
So let's hear the motion, I guess.
I'm moving that the vote on the release of conditions for the ADA monies for Greenwich Avenue be postponed until the legal department reviews any current town documentation and relevant statutes and provides an opinion as to whether the safe harbor provisions of the ADA regulations apply to the current ADA curbs or whether the curb ramps must be in compliance with the requirements of standards existing in 2010 or later.
is there a second? Mr. Alfano has seconded Ms. Vasiliotis' motion. Discussion on the motion is permitted for a postponement or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion? Ms. Moriarty?
I'm not going to be supporting this motion. I think what we heard clearly is that, well, what's the interpretation here? Is that if we're not obligated to do it, we're not going to meet the needs of our residents? That's just not a position that should be supported by any member of this board.
Well, excuse me, but, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm not sure that, we aren't meeting the needs of our current residents. Again, if they're meeting standards, there are standards for a reason. So I just want clarification going forward. You hear that we're not in compliance with ADA. I don't know if that's true or not. And why are we spending tax dollars if we are in compliance with ADA? I'm just asking for an independent review so we understand if we eventually spend this money, which we may, I don't know, that we are doing it in the proper legal way.
Mr. Chair, can I respond?
Ms. Moriarty? And then Mr. Kalb.
The standards that you're talking about are 1991 standards, right? Safe harbor means we don't have to bring it up to current standards. And we've heard from DPW saying that they are bringing these up to the current standards for compliance.
Safe harbor is there for a reason. And again, you are in compliance if you meet the safe harbor provisions. So I don't understand, how you're saying we wouldn't be in compliance.
Mr. Kalb?
Yeah, I also, I will not be supporting this motion, but I'd like to point out that my colleague and our vice chair, Ms. Vasiliotis, has been reading from written prepared statements, which indicates to me that these things were prepared in advance, and I have not had a chance to see them. It's the first time I'm hearing them, and I object to attending a meeting where an important motion like this is put forward and it hasn't been circulated, and we've had no chance to prepare or to rebut. So
Just for the record, this motion was prepared at 8:55 this morning.
right. So my view is that we should not be entertaining motions that are prepared just before a meeting and where we all have to deliberate in a very careful and thoughtful manner. I just don't think
We do that all
it's
the
sensible.
time.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah, I think, I think that this process should be, we should think about how we're addressing such issues. But in any case, I feel like that we should be moving forward on this. I guess apparently somebody's calling in to agree, so thank you.
Mr. Weisbrod?
I think what Scott is saying, or at least the way I hear what he's saying, is that, motions can be made at any point, but this matter has been before us for many, many, many months. And so the substance of what he's saying is spot on, in that for this body to function properly, there needs to be dialogue, engagement, sharing of information. That's been lacking in this matter. But the real reason I'm speaking at this moment is the ambiguity that there is, that, the notion that we don't know if we are compliant with ADA. I think that's been, we have the DPW before us. It would imply that DPW has been wasting its time all these years in designing something where maybe no design was needed. I think it's been abundantly clear, made abundantly clear by DPW that we are not in compliant with ADA and that the plans that they presented will put us in compliance with ADA. I don't think there's any confusion on that, or shouldn't be at this point. Thanks.
I disagree with that statement.
Anybody else? Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Fasciotis, seconded by Mr. Alfano to postpone. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Olczak?
No, I'm against postponing.
DeChamp?
Oh, no, I'm against postponing.
Thank you. DeChamp?
No.
Aurora?
Yes.
Selps?
No.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Tarkington?
Yes.
Moriarty?
No,
Weisbrod?
No.
Jansen?
Yes.
DeKalb?
No.
Alfano?
Yes.
6-6.
Okay, that's 6-6. I will break the tie in favor of the motion.
may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Our next meeting is September. Is that
Right.
the expectation, that there will be no new information for our DPW department before then?
I would hope that this information would be gathered post haste, and I'd be prepared to call a special meeting if we do get some resolution before. Ms. Jansen?
Yes, I would like to make another motion. This motion would be to produce an independent engineering report with potential alternative solutions if needed to improve accessibility. This will be an independent report funded by BET consulting funds and must be completed prior to the release of conditions.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Jansen and seconded by Mr. Alfano. Discussion on the motion?
I have a point of order question. And I'm trying to go back in history on prior legal rulings, but this is adding a new condition upon release. And our conditions, which we approve in the budget process, go through the RTM, where the RTM approves a budget with stated conditions. And does anyone else on the board have a recollection that we are not permitted to change or add new conditions?
So maybe as in lieu of a condition, Ms. Jensen would rather make this a motion to spend town funds to do this study and not call it a condition, but just outlining some of the funds that we have in our consulting to be used for this purposes, with the hope that obviously the other parts of her proposed condition would become part of a motion rather than a condition.
I would be amenable to that.
But you have a second, and he has to be amenable
Is
to.
Mr. Alfano amenable? I think we need a rereading of the motion as it would be modified, if you could, Ms. Jansen.
I would remove the last part of the motion. So motion to produce an independent engineering report with potential alternative solutions if needed to improve accessibility. This will be an independent report funded by BET consulting funds, period.
Second.
Okay, it would not seem, I'm trying to understand if that would be something required before we take a vote on PW 10 at some point. I'm concerned about the time it would take to do such a study. Ms. Moriarty?
Well, there's a time issue. So this now becomes a BET engineering study. I'm not sure on what basis the BET can manage a study on engineering solutions on the avenue interpreting ADA regulations. We have employees charged to do that. This is really a way to circumvent the recommendations presented to the board so far. I think that this is a horrible precedent. I think it can't be conducted in the manner in which this kind of study needs to be done.
Ms. Tarkenton?
So I'd just like to make a further comment that these are the kind of issues that would have been either raised or not raised by planning and zoning when, additional information when it would review municipal improvement. So I would just relate that this is a need that unfortunately was not addressed originally.
Harry?
Mr. Weisbrot?
So we're, a new last-minute fly-by-the-night proposal's been set forth for an appropriation. What's the amount of the appropriation? We don't know. Should it go to a committee of the BET? Shouldn't it? Should it go to the Budget Committee? One would think. Should it go to, it's half-baked at best, and that's charitable. We don't know what the amount is. It's not going through any of the committee process. It's just a insane way to consider doing business. I would suggest that it be withdrawn.
Yeah,
I would-
Mr. DeChamps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Weisbrot. I can't think of a worse idea, frankly, than this one. We should rename the BET the Bureaucratic Estimation and Taxation Committee. We will set up committees and ad hoc groups to investigate, review, analyze, hire, and spend taxpayer money to do whatever we can to delay, stall, procrastinate projects that have been vetted by town experts, engineers in the field. We do not have the resources to do this. The town should not be spending hard-earned taxpayer dollars on pet bureaucratic projects presented at the last minute to do nothing but to throw sand in the gears of progress for our most vulnerable citizens. I urge my colleague to remove this, I'll call it a motion, remove this motion, and let's go back to what we're talking about now. Investigate, review the safe harbor, which is another delay tactic, but let's do that. And then let's stay focused on getting this project done for the town.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes, I'd like to remark to that, to my colleague in particular, who in another situation where the experts on the Board of Ed had determined that the best approach for energy at a school was using traditional HVAC, and upended the experts to propose a renewable kind of energy approach and delayed the implementation of the HVAC, and today is still in limbo. So yes, sometimes you do have an independent outside point of view to our own town personnel. It's not criticizing the town personnel, it's just another point of view that is being requested.
Unfortunately, my colleague is factually incorrect, and it's frankly inappropriate and irrelevant to the matter at hand today and the issue before us. The Farnsworth report was an expert consultant that was hired by the town to review the situation that was so mentioned, and that was what was ignored. And this board, prior to my engagement with this board, did not do the necessary work and diligence to get the proper amount of funding review for the alternate sources of energy. They didn't review the geothermal option, if this is what you want to start talking about, and I think we're getting off course here. And the RTM overwhelmingly rejected that plan.
I think we've gone away from the motion, please. Mr. Selps, did you have your hand up?
Whatever goodwill we have with the community is besmirched when we have the exchanges of the type that we just had. Let's stick to this business. I agree with my colleagues that I don't think we've really had a good definition of exactly what this independent engineering report is going to engage in. How much is it going to cost? How much time is it going to take? And what exactly are the findings that are required? The only thing I hear is alternative designs. For what? For each of the intersections? For the whole thing? Does anybody have any idea what this is going to cost? Does anybody have any idea how much time this is going to take? You can spin it however you want. This is a transparent delay. I am beyond disappointed.
Anybody else?
I just
Ms.
want to
Moriarty?
make one last comment, and this is really directed to the chair. I've been on this board now 9 years, 8 years, got the gray hair to show it. I think, Mr. Chair, I ask you to look at what role the BET should be playing in this decision, and I would say that this is not the BET role. This is not where we should be. If we want another study, it should be under the purview of DPW to perform the study, but I don't believe one is even called for here. So I just wanted to get that remark. This board needs to get into its right lane, needs to understand how we can work with departments and support departments and not use, whatever power we have over the financials to try and push forward our individual personal opinions as opposed to considering all of the factors. Thank you.
So
Ms.
it's,
Tarkington, then Ms. Jansen.
so I was just going to say, it's disappointing, Leslie, that you make these comments now. It's unfortunate that we didn't proceed with what was the original condition on this project, and that was municipal improvement.
Which we don't have the power to do.
I'm sorry, we have done this
P&Z
before.
has the power for MI decisions, not the BET.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes, I hear the comments from my colleagues, and I appreciate them. The intent of the motion was to have consideration by Public Works Department to have a fresh view on some aspects of the design being proposed. I don't want this kind of motion to be considered obstruction, and so in that goodwill, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Very good, thank you. Anybody,
You have to have consent of the seconder.
you agree, Mr. Alfano?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Tarkington?
Yes, I would like to make a motion too. The reason for this is, provided in the 2019 Plan of Conservation Development, page 95, quote, "All of Greenwich Avenue is a National Historic District that will be preserved," end of quote. And so my motion is the DPW is to forward its Greenwich Avenue plan to the Historic District Commission for its review and approval. This plan should go to the Planning and Zoning Commission if it is part of the National Historic District review process. In other words, it's unclear to me exactly. So that's my motion, but I just want to add, it's unclear to me it's whether the role of P&Z or even architectural review or others, but it would be the process. The intent is the process.
I'm sorry, could you
Is there
read
a
that
second?
again, Leslie? I
Could you
didn't,
repeat them?
Yeah,
We
repeat
need
it.
Is
Okay.
there a second for the motion?
Is there a second? A second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Tarkington, seconded by Ms. Fesley-Otis, and Ms. Tarkington, I'll repeat the motion, please.
The motion is the DPW to forward its Greenwich Avenue plan to the Historic District Commission for its review and approval. This plan should go to the Planning and Zoning Commission if it is part of the National Historic District review process. And the reason I gave is it's provided in the 2019 Plan of Conservation and Development, page 95, quote, "All of Greenwich Avenue is a National Historic District that will be preserved," close quote.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Weisbrod.
Yep. You're now giving power to the Historic District Commission that I don't think it has. I don't believe the Historic District Commission has any power to approve anything. As far as I know, it has the power to advise and input. And so this, again, talk about getting out of our lane. Now we're into all kinds of land use issues that we have no expertise or business getting involved in. Historic District Commission is an advisory board, as far as I know. It's not there to review and approve things. So I think it's a misguided motion.
Ms. Tarkington?
Again, I repeat that I did add, this plan should go to Planning and Zoning Commission. If the process begins with Planning and Zoning Commission, then I would recommend it go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. But this plan is filed, this is already a national process. The plan filed includes all of the land area as well as identified historic buildings. And there is a street map with everything there as part of the approval process.
Mr. Selves?
My objection to this motion is similar to the point that Ms. Moriarty raised previously with respect to the prior motion. This is just a backdoor way to add conditions that were not present when we approved this and sent it to RTM. This is just another way to add conditions that we have not previously considered. And for that reason, I have to respectfully oppose this motion.
Mr. Deschamps?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is just another bureaucratic step that's unnecessary to the completion of the project. That's what this is. There's a lot of discussion on this committee since I've joined about private sector. I hear it a lot. I've been in the private sector. I am still in the private sector. I work in the private sector. This type of process would never be tolerated in the private sector because this is horrible governance. This is bureaucracy in its worst form. This is exactly what citizens and taxpayers do not want to see in their government. This is the opposite of what we should be doing here, the absolute opposite. And that's not to say that our job is simply just to fund projects that come before us. Absolutely not. We've had countless hearings throughout months of time through all sorts of departments from this town, and then public hearings and conditions put on to the funding. All of these steps are prudent. They're good steps to go through. We've met all of them, and here we are at 10:56 on Tuesday, sitting here talking about motions to add red tape, bureaucracy, delay, stall, all at the expense of our most vulnerable citizens and taxpayers. The opposite of what this board should be doing. We should be seeking governmental efficiency. We should be seeking the best way with the least amount of money to fund projects that this town needs. We're talking about the POCD. I can tell you, you read the POCD, it absolutely wants to have a project like this completed. This enhances the avenue. That's what this project does. It enhances the avenue. It makes it more accessible. It brings it up the code. Bringing in committees and historic foundations is not what we should be doing as a board here. This is not our charge, not our charge. And I would just hope, I have a lot of respect for everybody on this board, but this is not the right way to go. This is not in best practices with Republican ways of doing things or Democrat. This isn't even a partisan thing to me. This is just a terrible process, complete with bureaucratic red tape and stall that we should not be doing. We have other things to be dealing with here. This town has major issues in front of it, the capital budget being one of them that I was hoping we would get to this summer. Let's get on to the things that we need to be focusing on as a board. Let's use all of this bipartisan effort and all the energy that we have here and all the experience that is at this dais to the completion of these projects, not creating red tape and bureaucracy. I will not support that. I will not be part of that. That's not why I ran for the BET. And I think we're wasting not only our time, but the citizens' time, our department's time. I apologize to the DPW for this. I think it's an embarrassment.
Ms. Moriarty?
Through the chair, I wanted to know if Amy or Jim have had conversations with P&Z department or commission on the status of the recommendations.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we talked to P&Z prior to this to find out whether this required an MI, and it was stated to us that it does not. In prior conversations on other aspects of Greenwich Avenue, sidewalk and curb modifications do not require historic district consultation.
Ms. Harkington, did you have another?
I'm going to make a comment. I do think that, P&Z would have given a good review in terms of an overall presentation package. When I go into New York, which I do once or twice a week, and come out of, say, the MetLife building, which has had newly repaved pavement, it's a very dark color with some, a little speckle to it. The pads, which are important to have, match, et cetera. I just think that there's a way to do something and do it, in a way that preserves the quality of Greenwich Avenue, which represents 22% of the revenue from our total commercial grand list. And I think it's important. Quite frankly, I don't want to have any issues with this board over this motion, and I'm happy to withdraw it. But I think that many of the discussions we've had today would not be taking place if we had the original requirement. And quite frankly, that has been there. MI approval has been put on again and again on projects by this board, not only Greenwich Avenue, but it could be Eastern Greenwich Civic Center or the ice skating rink, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it is always added value to have the Planning and Zoning Commission and its related parties involved. So I withdraw my motion if my seconder.
I concur.
Okay, the motion's been withdrawn. Any further motions? Seeing none, PW 10 has been postponed. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is the Comptroller's report, but as I think is obvious, Mr. Minarski had to take a sick day today. So we won't have a Comptroller's report, nor will we have a Treasurer's report, unless Natasha would like to give a Treasurer's report since she's here. I think we could skip that if you'd prefer, because you weren't prepared. I'm sorry? Or Roland, you want to give a report?
No, but I think since the reports are in your package, you can
Yeah.
approve the reports.
I think the reports are in our package, so we can skip oral on them.
So I've read the report, and so I'll make a motion to accept the controller's report.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty to accept the Controller's report?
Well,
Yes.
the controls and then the treasurer's. I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
stepped back.
We'll take it as a Controller's report first. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, it's 12-0 on the Controller's report.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the treasurer's report.
Ms. Moriarty, second.
I'll second that. I think we can ask whether Ms. Nemitz wants to make any comments on it. It's up to her.
Do you have any comments, Natasha? Sure, on the microphone.
Not too many comments on the Treasurer's report, maybe a couple items to note that the general fund ended the month of June and fiscal year of 2024 with the cash balance of $142 million. And the appreciation for the general fund for the month of June was $476,000. But what's more important, appreciation for the general fund for the fiscal year 2024 was a little bit over $9 million. And then the total cash position of the town fund, excluding retirement plan and OPEB plan, as of June 30th was $240 million. Those would be all my comments. Any questions?
Okay. Is there any objection to accepting the treasurer's report? Seeing none, we've got a temporary absence by Mr. Alfano, so we'll make it 11-0. And Mr. Cow, sorry. So we'll make it 10-0-0. Roland, you had your hand up?
No.
No, okay. Ms. Aurora has advised me she's trying to make a flight today, so if there's no objection, I'd like to take up item 10 on the agenda, please.
Thank you, Harry.
Okay.
I appreciate that. So I just wanted to give a quick update on the OPEB OCIO contract. Just as a reminder, Vanguard's services, Vanguard's our current OCIO, their services ended on June 13th, 2024, and the account is currently self-managed. As you know, the IAC and the Evaluation Committee, which is the same, the IAC Committee is Elliot Scott, myself, and David Alfano, and we had interviewed 4 firms. We selected Morgan Stanley Smith Barney as our finalist, and purchasing and legal have been liaising with them to put together a contract and award letter, which has been circulated to all BET members. Today, we're going to ask the full BET to approve and bring Morgan Stanley on board as the OCIO for the OPEB Trust. As many of you know, we'd been waiting on announcing this firm until our legal had completed their work. The IAC committee voted 4-0 to, or the evaluation committee rather, voted 4-0 to select Morgan Stanley Smith Barney for the OPEB Trust. We believe their team's the most equipped and aligned with our investment objective, and further has a local presence here in Greenwich to service our day-to-day needs. Purchasing, with the help of legal, has produced an award letter for MS. I'm sorry, repeating myself. All right, so just key terms from the agreement. Primarily, Morgan Stanley will be responsible for asset allocation, security selection, and cash management in line with our investment policy statement. Portions of the account, and this is all in the award letter, I'm just highlighting 3 key terms. Portions of the account may be invested in mutual funds, ETFs, and/or alternative investments, either as an investment product or as portions of the account's allocation. And finally, the management fee is asset-based. It's 20 basis points, excluding cash management. This fee includes all fees or charges at MSSSB, but does not include the cost of investment manager fees and/or expenses charged by funds, along with some other stuff, which is in your in the award letter that's been circulated. So today, really what we're asking for is to approve the legal contract and the award letter that is will be sent over to Morgan Stanley after our approval. I hope that's clear. I'm sorry, I just kind of put that together.
Okay, do you have a motion to make?
The motion will be to approve Morgan Stanley. I hope I'm saying this correct, Karen, but please correct me if I'm wrong, because this went in front of the law committee yesterday. But the approval is really to approve Morgan Stanley, to bring on Morgan Stanley as the OCIO for the OPEB Trust, and specifically the contract and award letter that has been circulated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Alfano, moved by Ms. Aurora to approve Morgan Stanley. Ms. Fasciotis, do you have a law committee report?
Yeah, we met yesterday. We looked over the documentation, had no comments, and, accepted the agreements.
Is there any discussion on this matter? Ms. Moriarty?
I just want to acknowledge the work of the IAC on this process. I appreciate it. And I know we only got circulated this information during the meeting, so a little bit late this time. We'll clean it up for next time we have to do this. Hopefully that's not for a long time, but thank you for circulating that.
Yeah, I think I attended a lot of the IAC meetings to make sure that I was up to speed on this. I think they've done a terrific job on this. And, I think this is a time when our committee system really functioned well. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, could we just get a quick recap just on the steps forward from here, just so I'm clear on, so we vote to motion to approve this, and then could you just quickly walk us through then how this works through to execution?
Yep, and if I'm wrong, Natasha's there to correct me, but so after we approve today, the award letter goes over to Morgan Stanley and the contract. They execute, we counter-execute, and then there's a time period where they come on board. The onboarding should take about, I think, 1 to 2 weeks, which will, the assets will be moved over to Morgan Stanley. So we are targeting August 1st. Today's July 16th. So provided that the vote goes through today, Morgan Stanley has already been in discussions with these contracts, so they're expecting some of the amendments have already gone back and forth between the two.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So are the contracts by and large in executable form now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Fasciotis?
Yes, I just wanted to thank also Natalia for keeping us on track and
Yes.
making sure that this was shepherded through
Here.
to the conclusion today.
Here.
Okay, any other discussion? I don't think we need a roll call vote here unless someone believes so. No. Is there any objection to adopting the motion to hire Morgan Stanley Smith Barney according to what the IAC committee is recommending?
David.
David Alfano seconded. Is there any objection? All right, unanimous consent, 1200, thank you. We'll go back up. I'll make just quick comments on, there's nothing on number 6. On number 7, I've been tracking the issues surrounding the engine 1 that was destroyed. And David Weisbrot and I viewed engine 1, it's clearly destroyed. The frame is bent. It's quite shocking that nobody was hurt more, and we're thankful for that. The fire department is working on 2 fronts. One, which probably doesn't work, is to find an engine that someone decides to cancel an order. The other is they're in talks with Firematics, the local dealer for Pierce, to see if we could get a second engine put into production parallel to the engine that was ordered and expected to be delivered in the fall of 2025. I heard that an adjuster was out, took pictures of it last week, but Megan D'Amato was out, so I haven't been able to link up with her, but that's an update. I noted that the insurance is a $15,000 deductible, but this engine was purchased 4 years ago for about $800,000, and the new ones are $1.2 million. So I don't know what the insurance will cover yet. I did note with the fire chief that August 8th or 9th is the deadline for the fall RTM. If Pierce is able to do something for us, that we would be prepared to call a special meeting in order to get it, if needed, on the RTM for September. So it's a moving target. I'll keep everybody updated as possible. Does anybody have a question? Yeah, David?
I don't know whether Megan D'Amato has advised yet whether this would be a replacement cost or.
No, we don't know that yet.
That's in process.
That's in process. Karen?
No, that was my question as well.
Okay. On special projects, CMS does have a new chairman, Joe Rossetti, as of last Friday. So that hurdle has been transitioned. I think there's, still some involvement of Mr. Turner, which he's still on the building committee, but, I'm a little concerned about where he's still involving himself, but I don't want to say anything more. The final documents are with Turner Construction, so estimated costs are being developed now, and we should have an updated estimate by the end of July.
Mr. Chairman, when you say final documents, are you referring to construction drawings?
Construction drawings, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Leslie?
Just at this point, when do they expect to go out to bid? Or
I
do you
don't
not know yet?
I don't know that yet.
Thank you.
I think we need to see what the new estimate is from Turner Construction. Anybody else? Julian Curtis also has a new chairman due to the unfortunate passing of Bill Kelly. It's David Levine, who was the vice chairman. I don't know, oh yes, Bob Chasey was elected vice chairman.
I'm sorry?
Bob Chasey was elected vice chairman. I think we're very close to having final documents to go to bid with that project, but I was unable to attend the full Friday meeting because it conflicted with the Friday meeting of CMS, the special meeting. So more as I get it. We have no old business. We've done number 10. Number 11 would be to approve the meeting minutes of the June 17th meeting. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Ms. Moriarty, seconded by Mr. Selps to approve the June 17th, 2024 minutes. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I didn't see the minutes. I was just wondering, where are the minutes?
I think they're posted on the website, but
They're posted. They were not part of the packet, but they were separately added I don't think they were separately distributed.
They're on the town
they're on the
website,
town website.
BET, as a separate item to the packet and the minutes
I
are
would
posted.
suggest that we wait until the next meeting. if
Okay.
possible.
Since they were not circulated, we're going to wait until the next meeting if the, Ms. Moriarty if affirms that.
That's fine. I do want to point out, I think that there are about 8 sets of minutes which have not yet been voted on by this board. We're way
Yeah,
behind.
we're still trying to sort that
And,
out.
we need,
Yeah.
you know, Karen, I'm going to reach out to you to assess where we are and figure
It'll
out
be
the
a busy
path
summer.
forward.
It'll be a summertime project, and we'll get this straightened out in September. Mr. Selps, you agree to withdraw the motion? Okay. I think this has been obviously a difficult meeting. I appreciate everybody's participation. I think that a lot of issues have surfaced about how the town in total does conduct business before us. I'm also disappointed that we didn't know more of the questions and concerns and such during our budget deliberations. I think that's the key lesson learned here. And hopefully we will do better going forward. And it's certainly one of my objectives, and I would expect everybody would share that. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Alfano moves, Mr. Self seconds. Without objection, we are 11:00 to adjourn. We lost Isha Aurora to an
Yeah, I'm
airplane flight. Thank you all.
Special meeting of the Budget Committee to order at 11:24 a.m. And this is a meeting because one of our members had departed the meeting, last meeting early, and had submitted comments on the minutes. So since that time, both sets of the minutes at that point were posted. They included some additional changes for Mr. Weisbrod, and Ms. Moriarty has suggested that the Budget Committee minutes be the template for future meetings and for our, I guess, the BET also. And so had some additional, we'll call them scribblers changes for the overall presentation of the minutes. I think you were pleased with the changes in the minute format overall and just had some additional comments to make them consistent. Is that correct? More or less. And we'll make some additional modest changes.
That is
So-
correct. So can I move the May 14th Budget Committee minutes?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher, May 14th. Those people in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we adjourn.
No, we have
No,
no,
not yet.
June 11th. I want to move the June 11th minutes for approval.
I'll second that.
June 11th minutes moved by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, David.
Now,
Now I move to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, so David moves to adjourn, seconded by Harry Fisher at 11:25.
Yeah.
Those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank you.